Bob Lazar, the very first real witness to an actual UFO and UFO tech. The first interviews of people when they're witnesses are usually the best interviews, especially when you're talking about decades in between interviews. Because if there's blowback from you being a whistleblower witness, and there's decades in between your testimony, there's a whole lot of stress from the first time now meeting you on the second time. You've had time to discuss it, you've had time to mull it over in your head, and you've got a lot of fear from the consequences from last time. So these interviews I find to be very nice.
This week, we've heard the contention of UFO researchers that there's a secret government within our government. While that may be hard to believe coming from the UFO perspective, we've certainly learned in Watergate and the Iran-Contra scandal that factions within our government can and do pursue their own hidden agendas outside of the law, outside the control of Congress, or the knowledge of the American people. This is exactly the type of operation we'll hear about tonight. It's a chilling scenario with worldwide implications that may have its roots right here. Area 51, that mysterious corner of the Nevada test site, is no longer much of a secret. The fact that secretive things go on here is a given, even to the Soviets, who make daily spy flights over the facility to take a peek at what's going on. These photos, never before shown in public, are about as close as anyone will ever come to seeing what the place looks like again. The dry bed of Groom Lake, corrugated metal buildings, a 3-mile-long runway, and some highly sophisticated radar and detection equipment. It's been known by many names over the years: Dreamland, the Ranch, the Skunk Works. If ever there was a place to test a secret new technology, this is it. And that's exactly what's been done here for decades. Area 51 is where Francis Gary Powers and the other U-2 pilots were trained in the 50s, and where the U-2 itself was developed. The SR-71 spy planes that spotted Soviet missiles in Cuba in the early 60s were also developed at 51. 51 is where stealth technology was nurtured, where Star Wars devices are still tested, and where all manner of CIA monkey business has been plotted and refined. It's the perfect place for secret things, but of course, that's no secret. 51 is ringed by the forbidden vastness of the Nevada test site, by the looming Groom Mountains, and by sparsely populated desert expanses. The few people who do live out here have no love lost for the military, but they're conservative, patriotic, and they mind their own business. You ever see stuff you can't explain?
Sure. Lots of stuff.
Care to elaborate?
No.
Happy anniversary to you.
On any given night at the Rachel Bar and Grill, you might find 3 or 4 people who work at Area 51, there amid the flowing Budweisers and cowboy hats. You might find them, but they aren't going to talk to you, not about the things they've seen over the mountains. A steady trickle of curiosity seekers flows through here, strangers drawn by strange stories of lights in the night sky. Their questions also go unanswered. No one who's worked at Dreamland has ever publicly acknowledged what so many people have suspected for years, that alien technology is being tested in the Nevada desert. The speculation first surfaced in documents obtained by UFO researchers, documents about something called Project Aquarius. The documents, allegedly prepared for an organization called MJ-12, state that a program to fly recovered alien spacecraft was established in 1972 and is continuing in Nevada. The National Security Agency has confirmed it does have a Project Aquarius, but denies it has anything to do with flying saucers. NSA will not say what Project Aquarius is. Speculation was heightened in 1984 when the Air Force seized nearly 90,000 acres around Groom Lake. The action was, by most accounts, illegal. During congressional hearings about the land grab, Congressman John Seiberling grilled the military about the legal authority used in the action and was told the authority was at a much, much higher level than the Air Force. Seiberling asked what authority is higher than the laws of the United States. The Air Force official said he could respond, but only in a closed briefing. In 1987, when the Air Force sought to renew its stranglehold on the Groom Range, news articles once again mentioned the talk about alien spacecraft, and subsequent articles in national magazines quoted unnamed sources about things of alien origin flying in Nevada, things that would make filmmaker George Lucas drool. Despite the speculation, no one who knew Area 51 from the inside ever talked publicly about the saucer stories.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs, that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
The live interview with the shadowy Dennis drew international attention. Portions were broadcast by radio in 6 European countries and in a nationally televised TV special in Japan.
Actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs.
Despite numerous inquiries and feelers, Dennis has remained anonymous until now. His real name is Robert Lazar, a young scientist with eclectic interests. The choice of Dennis was an inside joke. He says that's the name of his superior at Groom Lake. It wasn't a joke to Dennis.
He called right after and he said, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now?" And I said, "Well, no." And he hung up the phone.
Lazar's story is, by any standards, fantastic. He says he's telling it in order to
I would say that the reason why we don't see the stress at this point that we see later in life is he was naive that what they did to him was actually possible. It's kind of like we are today. We're naive in the fact that our rights can be taken away. He was naive in the fact that the government can do so much to him, and there was nothing he could do about it, and no one that would stand up for him.
protect himself. He says he was hired to work at an area called S4, which is a few miles south of Groom Lake. At S4, he says, are flying saucers, antimatter reactors, and other working examples of technology that is seemingly beyond human capabilities.
Right, this came from somewhere else. I mean, as bizarre as that is to believe, but I mean, it's there. I saw it. I know what the current state of the art is in physics, and it can't be done.
So as you see him, his body is moving with him. It's singing. The spine is just flawlessly flowing. His shoulders are talking. His hands are talking. He's looking around. He's accessing appropriate areas of his brain. And remember everything in context, because if you don't have context about what's really going on, you'll miss a lot. Like the fact that he's being threatened. Things are being taken away from him, and he doesn't really yet know or doesn't understand the depth of which they're being taken away from him. And those are two very important differences. He can know and not understand, which will not give you stress. Or he cannot know and has no idea, and there's no stress. So we don't have to worry about that stress. He's apparently very comfortable in front of the camera. It's quite odd. And again, I chalk that up to being naive. He's extremely naive on how he is perceived, on the dangers that he's in. And so you get the pure thought process that he has and what he has seen. And his body sings with him. He's very relaxed in it. He saw that stuff. His shoulders are going up and down because he doesn't understand why you are even asking him these questions in a way that says, I don't believe you, or prove it. It's like, I saw it. I'm a truth-telling guy. I don't understand why you're confused. I have physics and mechanical degrees and all kinds of stuff. I know things. Why are you confused?
Checking out Lazar's credentials proved to be a difficult task. He says he earned degrees in physics and electronics, but the schools we contacted say they've never heard of him. He also said he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos National Lab, where he experimented with one of the world's largest particle beam accelerators, a half-mile-long behemoth capable of generating 700 million volts. Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there. They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians. A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It, too, mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist. We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
Well, they're trying to make me a non-person.
Explain. You called where?
Well, the schools that I went to, the hospital that I was born at.
Now, you had the first part of it. His body was singing with him. You don't really see any stress, not even TV stress. And now we see this part where he's admitting they're trying to make him a non-person. Or as we like to put it in today's terms, unperson. Because this has been going on forever. He's still singing. His body still sings. But he's not as loose as he was. He's accessing appropriate parts of his brain. He's giving you appropriate body language. He's emphasizing on appropriate areas, but we don't see that true fear where he's looking around. When you get someone who's so stressed that there's a fear induced, they start darting around looking for the danger. They become easily startled. That part isn't there, but you just see the stress. It's building.
Past job, and essentially nothing comes up with my name in it.
He smiles, but out of futility, knowing the whole thing must sound ridiculous. According to Lazar, his employer was the United States Navy. He says he and other government employees would gather near EG&G, fly to Groom Lake, then a very few people would get into a bus with blacked out or no windows and drive to S4. When you get off the bus, what do you see?
It's a very interesting building. It's got a slope of probably about 30 degrees.
So we have the appropriate parts of his brain being accessed. What do you see? He instantly goes to the doing of something, which is kind of weird, but considering how his brain works, we won't discount that, because then the next part, he's got a visual memory and he's describing it to you. His body is singing with him. His body flows with him. He's not stiffening up. He's not brushing it away. He's literally thinking it out.
Which are hangar doors. And it has textured paint on it, but it looks like sand. It's made to look like the side of the mountain that it's in, whether it's...
And that's the other part. When it comes to body language and the words, they have to match. So he's describing the texture. And so you see his hands and his body touching as if he's actually touching what he's describing. They're really singing. He's got a whole harmony going on his description on this building, this area.
To disguise it from satellite photographs or what.
He says he was never told exactly what he'd be working on, but figured it had something to do with advanced propulsion. On his first day, he was told to read a series of briefings and immediately realized how advanced the propulsion was.
The power source is an antimatter reactor. They run gravity amplifiers. There's actually two parts to the drive mechanism. It's a bizarre technology. There's no physical hookup between any of the systems in there. They use gravity as a wave, using waveguides, almost like microwaves.
It took a while, Lazar.
So you see him filtering words, but remember, this is a person with a scientific mind who understands the tech and how it's supposed to work in comparison to those times. The idea of Wi-Fi and frequencies manipulating matter wasn't really there. The ability to do that was not in that time.
Says before he actually saw one of the flying discs, however, there were hints everywhere.
Right, they had a poster, and it looked like a commercial poster almost, like it was lithographed and you could buy it at a Kmart or something, but they were all over the place, and it had
So as he's describing this one, they're all over the place. He's describing these posters, and he's smiling with it as he's doing it. These posters are all over the place. It's a funny memory. He accesses the memory. His body sings with him. People who are making something up, and you've seen them in politics, I know you know. That's where the phrase, look back at something. Oh, when I look back, up in the back of your head. When I look back, those good memories. People don't do that if they're trying to deceive you. No, they've got to actually construct it all out and figure it out and how to tell you something and sell it to you so you believe it. He's not doing that. He's smiling. He's accessing that part of the mind that has the memory of this. It gives him pleasure in the happiness that came from this. The little chuckle, ha ha, that was kind of funny. Ha ha ha, pun intended.
The disc that I coined the term the sport model was lifted off the ground about 3 feet at area S4 on the dry lake there, and the caption on the bottom said, "They're here."
And there again, you catch him. He's describing something happening, and his body actually acts it out. It hovers 3 feet off the ground, and his hand is down where it was, and then it comes up to where at least to him, where it was, hovering. If you're going to trust someone to tell you anything, their body language should look like this guy.
And those are just all over the place.
Later, he got to see the real thing.
When I was let in, it was the first time I saw the sport model in the hangar, sitting down, and I was told
That was actually a really good shot. The first time I actually saw the sports model, and he goes up and he's thinking about, I was told.
Could have walked me in the front door, but they purposely wanted to walk me by it. I was told not to say anything and just keep my eyes forward and walk past the disc into the office area. And I did, and as we went by it, I just kind of...
So you see him kind of stop, and then he looks off, and he realizes, he's done something that no one else, at least us normies, get to do. And that is to look at something that hovers and floats. The enormity of that even strikes him like, wow, I got to see that. I got to see that in action. And I'm trying to relay this information to this person.
I stuck my hands on it just to run it alongside the thing. And
so he stuck his hands on it just to run it alongside the thing. And then you see him do like a side and down away, like to get away. And we're not quite sure. We can sort of guessed that it was probably something he wasn't allowed to do and he did it anyways, but it's something that he wants to get away from.
You know, that was about the smallest time. After that, I got to see it actually lift off the ground and operate.
But you also, in between that, you saw more than...
And all of a sudden here, we get really tight. After that, I got to see it operate. It lifted off the ground and operated. And he quits smiling and goes stiff. Not while he's saying it. So what he's saying is not false, but whatever it is, the afterwards was extreme stress.
One.
Yeah. The hangars are all connected together, and there are large bay doors between each one. And there were 9 total that I saw, each one being different.
He's still stressed even as he talks about this.
Like they had the assortment pack.
Security at S4 was oppressive, Lazar says, and his superiors used fear and intimidation almost as a brainwashing tool.
It did everything but physically hurt me.
Put a gun to your head?
Yeah.
And said what? Actually put a gun to your head?
Well, they did that even in the original security briefings. They had guards there with M16s, the guys slamming their finger into my chest, screaming in my ear, some people pointing weapons at me. Like I said, it's not a good place to work.
So you hear that and it sounds really awful, and his body sings with him. They were doing this, but it's not giving him stress. They did everything to try and intimidate. Now, obviously, if it was as bad as he's saying, most people would not go to work there unless they were really, really lured in by money or their deep curiosity for, I want to work on something that is driving me in this direction. And for him, of course, physics. It's like, oh, wow, I don't care what I have to do. I want to learn. I got to see it. But he's very flippant on this whole intimidation thing. And it probably did happen. It may not have happened to the extent that would stress him out. Or maybe he was just really good at reading people and knowing that they weren't going to hurt him. And that's why it didn't really faze him. Who knows?
Fear factor would surface later. Lazar agreed to undergo a polygraph exam as part of this report. Polygrapher Ron Slay asked about the technology Lazar had seen.
Did you knowingly lie when you said you had actually seen anti-gravity propulsion in operation?
No.
The results of this exam were inconclusive.
Now, polygraphs are great for detecting stress. This man asked a question on a specific kind of propulsion system. And if you're not quite sure, which he has already said, they didn't know how it worked, and you give a specific type of description to a propulsion system, and your mind is trying to be honest and truthful, and you're going, it may be that, or it may be this. I'm not quite sure, but I understand the person that is talking to me is not a physicist or a mechanical engineer, and his wording is limited, so I'm just going to say yes. It would have been a better question if the examiner would have asked him, did you observe something that looks like it may be run from anti-gravity type vehicles?
Lazar appeared to be truthful on one test, deceitful on a second. Slay recommended that a second examiner be brought in. Polygrapher Terry Tavernetti runs a corporate security operation and is a former Los Angeles police officer. He put Lazar through 4 tests and concluded there was no attempt to deceive.
And I left there thinking that I feel we do have some credibility to what the subject had to say. And that's when I went to some of my colleagues.
Tavernetti.
You see him, I do feel that, he's got credibility, and he takes that deep breath in and his mouth gets tight. And it may just be the actual subject matter because we see stress from him.
Sent the test results to a third polygrapher who agreed the results appeared truthful. The charts were then sent to a fourth examiner who did not agree, suggesting Lazar might be relating information he'd learned from someone else. The polygraphers conferred and decided they would not issue a final statement on truthfulness until more specific testing can be conducted, and that's where it stands. Tavernetti believes that difficulty in determining Lazar's truthfulness stems from the fear that was drilled into him.
I think we're talking about a subject here that is so far-reaching, and it is so emotional. And when you're dealing with emotions, this is polygraph, because we're dealing in polygraph, you're looking at fear. The fear of getting caught telling a lie because something bad will happen to you if you do.
Well, I am telling the truth. I've tried to prove that. What's going on up there could be the most important event in history. You're talking about contact, physical physical contact and proof from another system, another planet, another intelligence. That's got to be the biggest event in history, period.
And it's real.
And it's real and it's there. And I had an extremely small part in it, but I'm convinced that what I saw is absolute proof of that. There is no way we could have created those systems. There's no way we could have made the discs, the power supplies, anything to go with them.
His body sings with him, and it's actually nice to see that as he looks off in the distance, he's thinking it through in real time to answer this question. He's actually visualizing how it would be if we were to do it and the angles that would come from it. And of course, he answers to the best of his knowledge. We can't do that.
I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, Fero. Fero is one of the few cryptocurrency projects that I respect. Unlike most other cryptocurrencies, Fero is focused on safeguarding your financial privacy without compromising on trustlessness, which means no third parties are required, and transactions are private by default. Fero also has an exciting roadmap to look forward to. Features such as Instant Send, where payments can both be sent and confirmed within seconds. There's also Elysium, which adds tokenization functionality similar to Ethereum, but it also enables these assets to enjoy Fero's privacy technology. There's many more things on the roadmap, and if you'd like to learn more, head over to fero.org. If you'd like to learn more about analysing body language, there is a video course available on Mandy's website for Gold subscribers, where Mandy teaches more about her techniques of deception detection. There's also other content such as the Crime series and Interesting Mind series, available to both Gold and Silver subscribers.
If you like it, please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.